and you guys a lot for different questions, and you're always efficient to get back. And this past year, I know, has been challenging for everybody. And us with all our questions and people coming to us. So you guys have been great to get back to us and help us answer those questions as well. COVID's placed a big strain on a lot of businesses, as we know, in this past year. With the mandatory orders, did your department have any input on them? Like, I know that you go by the directive of public health and public safety, but were you able to make any recommendations, towards the mandatory order?
Oh yes, on a number of issues we have discussions with public safety and public health, and then we'll have some meetings with some various people within the public administration side of the clerk's office or ECO, and or within health, and they take all that feedback and bring it to COVID cabinet and for discussion. So yeah.
Oh, that's really good. And you said you have about 500 staff. During this last year with the COVID and the inquiries, how many of that staff goes towards the calls and answering questions and emails and things like that?
So we have about 90 people in our prevention department, and at times they're almost all tackling that in some shape or form.
And with the rules changing so much, the guidelines changing and the rules changing sometimes on a weekly basis there for a while, was your staff briefed, like, every time the change? Like, I know even with the COVID line, that we call, with everything changing, sometimes they'd get a different answer, call one person to the next to try to keep up to the changes. Did you guys have briefings? Like, how does your staff know that when something changes that, everybody's on the same page?
Yeah, granted, it would take a couple days sometimes. So it's sometimes you talk to different people. You could get two different answers, and I would honestly think I was at the front line of it. Sometimes I couldn't keep straight what was going on all the time. But we would do our best, and things change, and we would get the briefings in advance, and we'd have the communication going to staff as quickly as we can, but just as an example, today was when I was driving up here, I got a question. Well, here's some I'll call it an inconsistency. Okay, what's the answer to that? So we have to go then and get it clarified. So there's always something that's going to come up that you have to say, okay, bring the questions to us, and we'll go and get the right answers for it. But the briefings, I think we have a pretty good process in place where we have team meetings on a regular basis every day or every second day, and we tell them what the changes are, and we go from there. So it's again, anytime you have that kind of degree of change going on, it's always a challenge, but I think we did a pretty good job, and I can understand that some people got a little bit frustrated getting different answers from different people, but I think we closed the gap as best we can on some of those.
Yeah, no, I think they've been doing a fantastic job, and like I say, even with us having to call and figure out the answers, like I haven't seen too much of it. I was just wondering if you guys had a rougher time on your end. Yeah. In the last year over this COVID, have you received any concerns or complaints that that businesses weren't complying with the orders or the rules?
I'd say very few where it was deliberate non-compliance. Sometimes there was non-compliance because they just didn't know, and I think that's the role that our staff played was, okay, you're not compliant here, but this is what you need to do. And so then it was more of an education awareness, and almost all the employers would say, okay, thank you, and let's get it done. So even in times when we had to write an order and a business was shut down, you'd see maybe a news or something come out, this business was shut down, but what didn't come out is oftentimes they'd only be shut down for a half hour or an hour until they got something cleaned up, and our staff would work with them to get it fixed up and then open up the business again as soon as possible. So it wasn't about, like I said, deliberate non-compliance. It was an unawareness of what had to be done. So then we turned more to the education approach and helping them out.
No, that's great, and especially with now with so many businesses that are having such a hard time that if the best that they can do and that staying open would be detrimental, especially for now. I was just looking at the chart, and I couldn't tell from here if it was 18 or 19 the death rate, and 18 or 19, one of those years was like substantially higher than the others. Under any investigations or anything, was there a reason for that, or how come they were so high?
There was a lot of actually fatalities due to occupational disease that year. Was one, and but there were a number of other. I think there was also 2018. There was some of the police, the tragedies with the police force occurred that year. So that was there's a few extra ones in there.
A look into the hearing aids, when the hearing aids were changed, and when they changed the rule, I guess, towards the hearing aids, how much money was saved because of that, and not accepting the hearing aids claims, which were deemed from before? Was there a great savings in that? Did you notice?
Yeah, like we saw a decline of a few $1 million a year, like $2, $3, $4 million a year. But where the bigger savings is going to come from is the liability that was accrued. And if you look at the very first chart on slide 2, and you look at the second line, the liabilities, and you see the liabilities increased in 2018. They were 1.592 billion, or 200 million higher than last year. And then they've dropped $100 million down to 1.499. So that's those liabilities coming down. Some of it's hearing loss, some of it's some other changes that went in there. But the changes in that bill too were, on a cumulative basis, all accumulated to help reduce our liabilities. So we did see some decline in the annual savings, but the big amount is when you calculate that over the 20 or 30 years, it would be like $108 million in total over that time period. So it's what the total was. But
pretty substantial.
You only notice a little bit on a per year basis.
Okay. And then just as I was hearing you speak about being like the appeals in the cases, can you talk a little bit about what's the process of having appeal, how long it takes to go through?
Yeah. So now with the new legislation, and so once somebody gets a decision, they have 90 days to appeal it to our internal review, and there's just a form they fill out, and then it goes into our queue. What's our current wait time? About 5 or 6 months? Yeah, we've got a 5 or 6 month wait time right now. We want to get that down. We're actually adding some more staff to improve upon that even more. So then we'll issue a decision, and then if the injured worker or the employer doesn't like that decision, they have a year. I think isn't it a year to appeal to the Workers' Compensation Appeals Tribunal. In both cases, they can access the services of the workers' advocate or the employer's advocate office that is, they're hired through PEDAL, and they're independent, no charge for the injured worker to use them. They can guide them through that process and help them either filling out the application or gathering the information they need to make their appeal. And then when it goes to Workers' Compensation Appeals Tribunal, I guess in both cases they're notified whether it's our internal appeals process or WCAT. They say, yes, we've received your appeal. This is, we're going to schedule it, and then they say this is what you're going to need. In the case of with internally, we just look at the paperwork, and nobody comes in and presents anything. With Workers' Compensation Appeal Tribunal, they can have a hearing. It used to all be done in person, hotels or something like that. Once COVID started, a lot of it was done virtually through Zoom, and now they've also gone to written submissions. And then it takes them, once they've had the hearing, they have 90 days to issue their decision. And they're running about a year, I think, right now. We're still seeing some decisions from 2019 that we're getting decisions on right now, some from early 2020 that we're getting decisions on now. So it's about a year.
Okay, thank you. My time's up, but thank you for this round.
I do have
Thank
the
you, Madam
information
Chair.
just on the prevention statutes, like fatalities in 2018. So there was 24 in total. 12 were occupational disease. 5 of them were just more motor vehicle accidents that occurred, and 2 of them were the Fredericton police officers.
Sorry, how much was the disease one?
12 related to occupational disease.
Okay, thank you very much. A couple more with, in relation to the premiums, the pay. I know we talked about the legislation had changed, and the rates were projected to fall by about 25 cents per $100. So from 265 to about 240, and then, but you projected to fall to about $2 per 100 within the next 2 to 3 years. Just wondering, you know, where are you on this goal, and are there changes being made to go towards that?
Yeah, so maybe if I could refer you to slide 3. And so you can see you're right, we went from 265 to 240 down to 217 this year. When we announced the rate, the rate components we broke them down and showed people. So our base rate was actually $1.82, and then on top of that $1.82, there was a 35-cent surcharge that was used to build up our accident fund to bring us up to 115%. And so you can see now at the end of 2020, in our financial statements or financial summary that was on slide number 2, we're at 114%. So we're almost at that 115% level. So you know, we're optimistic that you know, that 35-cent surcharge will you know, once you get into that 115 to 125% range, you don't need the surcharge or that degree of surcharge anymore. So, like I said, our base rate is at $1.82. We're continuing to see you know, cost savings in other places. So that $1.82, we're optimistic that will continue to be reduced. But at the same time, we're also looking at some of the improvements to worker benefits that have been that the board has asked us to look at. So there's some, there could be some, you know, added costs there, but they're not too much. So I think that you know, we're aiming to be in the middle of the road, and I'm just looking here. You know, well, that's probably not I'd say we want to be comparable to the other provinces so that our businesses are competitive.
That's what I was going to ask, so when that happens and where we are now, does that bring us closer to the rest of the provinces?
Yeah, I think, yes.
Because we were way out there for a while, that we were so much higher.
Quebec is at $1.77 right now, for example. Nova Scotia's at $2.65. Prince Edward Island's at $1.57. Just for our closest neighbors.
Okay. And some of the changes with these have been like fewer workplace accidents that are lowering the claims. In your opinion, like, what are the reasons for that the risk that our accidents have gone down? Is there something being done in changes of?
Well, I mentioned in 2020, I'm sure that, you know, the COVID had an impact on it because, you know, people aren't working in the same risky environment, so there is that factor. But also the change in the legislation around occupational health and safety, where we made it very clear to employers that, and supervisors and managers, here's your responsibilities, and it really got their attention to say, oh, because a lot of them told us that, quite frankly, they said, no, we don't have that responsibility. And we said, oh, yes, you do. And we had a lot of education programs and then seminars. We explained to supervisors what they had to do. And so that woke, you know, opened their eyes to a lot of things that they had to do to make sure their workplaces were safe, both in the public sector and the private sector. So I think that was a big one. And also I think we changed our approach with how our health and safety officers conduct inspections or engage with the employers, because in 2017, 18, and even in most of the way through 19, it was, you know, we were going into places and they were writing a lot of orders or doing inspections, but we shifted that because we wanted to be more collaborative in a lot of ways, you know, because you don't want to show up in a workplace and have everybody scatter and they say, oh, here's an occupational health and safety person. We wanted to have a relationship where they say, you almost invite you in, because you'd say, well, the occupational health and safety person has a different set of eyes. Come on in, point out the risks that you see, because it's better that we get invited in and help them fix their risks before something happens than come in after something happens and say, oh, you had a terrible accident here, and here's all the fines that we're going to issue for you. So the team did a great job, I think, in building those relationships, and it was emphasized during COVID times that we want to have a collaborative relationship. So as I mentioned earlier, we're trying to build on that. But those are the things that we came up with on how I think the numbers have been improving, and we just want to keep them going in that direction.
Yeah, well, so my next question was, what do you see in the projected for this year and next? Are they continuing to fall, or are they?
2021 it's early, but so, yeah, it's early, but we also had a couple serious accidents just in the they were serious accidents in the last couple of weeks, but it makes you wonder what happens sometimes, but in general, we're on the good path.
Okay. Well, that's all I have for questioning. I want to thank you. If I hear something on the way, I might come up again, but I want to thank you for answering our questions today.
You have my email, my phone number.
I do. Thank you so much.